All right. Well, we were talking about books being adapted to movies before we got
Yeah.
this breaking news. Ready Player One is being made into a movie. I think Spielberg's attached to it, and
Yeah.
they were talking about casting this week. But before we talk about the casting, have you read the book? I've read the book, and I think I gave you the book for Christmas. So I hope you've
Yeah,
read
you
it.
did. It's
You
one
asshole.
of my favorite books that I've read in recent years, I think.
It's a pretty good book.
It's amazing.
It skyrocketed to the bestsellers list, which I think is
Yeah.
and
Deservedly.
it's young adult, which I think is why they're making a movie. But basically, that movie became so popular. I read that book. Sorry, did I say movie? That book became so popular. I read it before it was even published.
How did you do that?
Well, because there was a copy online, and it became so popular, just circulating the web.
And that's how it was published in the
Before it even was released, that everyone was reading it before it was even released. And then that's like I was like, oh, this book's really cool. And then by the time it rolled around to Christmas, it was out. So I got you a copy or whatever. Yeah, it was. I was actually reading a version of it that was not the final version. I don't think I've actually read the final version. I've only read the pre-published version, which I'm sure not much
Right.
has
Well, that
changed.
can't be different. Yeah.
Do you think it'd be a good movie?
I think it could be an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of that stuff would translate really well, but there's so many... like, there's so many franchises and stuff that are in there. Like, there's Star Wars stuff and Star Trek and...
No, you
they
made a
had,
good point here though,
like the
because
Japanese
they reference a
Spider-Man.
lot of video game franchises.
Yeah,
as well.
video games, movies,
Movies,
literature, like
yeah.
music, everything. Like, if they want to get all that stuff on screen, like,
Yeah.
they've got to get a big collaboration going.
You're a good. That's a great point. I didn't think about that. So I think you're probably all right on the video game front at the moment. I mean, you look at what
Yeah.
they did with Wreck-It Ralph. They got heaps of franchises coming in.
Yeah, that's right.
and
Wreck-It Ralph is
Essentially,
a good example.
yeah. I mean, you've got Qbert in there. You've got, I think you had Donkey Kong, you had Bowser, all the rest of it. And then you've got
Yeah. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the
and
Hedgehog, of
Pac-Man
course, yeah.
and all sorts of
Robotnik.
stuff.
Did I say Robotnik? Anyway, and then you think about Pixels, which came out as well, which had Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Qbert again.
Yeah.
So it seems like those guys are pretty willing to sign their name over. The
That's
question
right.
is,
Well,
though,
it's like the advantage is that stuff's from the 80s.
yes, well, that's what I was going to say. So here's the question for you. So reading the book, a lot of those references were even earlier than our times. Like, I think it was probably a lot of the references were early 80s, late 70s, right through to probably mid 90s. Would you agree with that, or?
Yeah, like it was about the guy who grew up in the 80s and he
Exactly.
was kind of living vicariously in the
nostalgia,
80s.
yeah, a lot of the nostalgia, and a lot of the reason why the book was popular was because of the nostalgic references and like these really obscure references,
Yeah, exactly.
because they all knew them. But I must admit, a lot of those references were over my head when reading the book because it was a generation or a decade before my time. Some of them were right in my wheelhouse, but some of them were probably a decade too early.
Yeah.
So
Like a lot of the stuff, even the ones that I knew, like they weren't my time. That was just stuff that
yeah.
has lasted the test of time, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. So the question's going to be, this movie's obviously going to be targeted at a younger audience. I think that's fair to say. Spielberg's
I'd say-
doing it. I'm imagining an ET type audience or an ET type, PG movie.
Yeah.
Are they going to update the references to 90s references, do you think?
See, I was wondering that because that would make it more relevant to the movie's target audience. But-
Exactly. Do you think
Yeah, I
they'll
don't
be
know.
talking about the warp pipes in Super Mario Brothers instead of the secret room with a message scribbled on the wall in some Atari game from the 80s?
Yeah, because kids these days aren't really going to appreciate the
Will
references.
they
that were
talk
in it.
about the Zelda Link to the Past secret well that you could get to where the guy who wrote into the magazine got his name on a plaque in that well or whatever it was? Do you know that Easter
Yeah,
egg
and
in
he
that?
put his name on the floor in
Yeah.
the room or whatever.
Yeah. I reckon they're more likely to do that than something like the old Atari games that they actually reference in the book. Anyway,
Yeah,
we'll see how it
I
goes. But basically, the news that came out this week was about the casting on that, and they're looking to cast the female characters from there. They had 3 names in the running: Elle Fanning, Olivia
Elle
Kirk,
Fanning? Yeah, she's
and
good.
Lola Kirk. Yeah, I think Elle Fanning's probably a given. I think she's a favorite of Spielberg.
Yeah, that's true.
She showed up in a few of his movies, and her older sister, what was her older sister, Dakota? She was in a lot of she was a lot of in Spielberg's movies as well. So I don't really have an opinion about the casting, to be honest. But I just wanted to see what you thought about the movie in general.
So yeah, I'm optimistic for it, but again, like we've got to wait to see a trailer before we really.
Exactly, it's hard to say. It's hard to say anything at this stage. But true to my word, I'm going to say it sucks until proven otherwise.
Yeah,
it's going to suck.
Cautiously optimistic about it.
I hate it already. No.
Write it off.
I actually think it has potential as well. We'll see.
Yeah.